and welcome to this week's episode of Tired and Thriving, a podcast recognizing just how tired and exhausted we all are while discussing ways to still thrive. Whether it's something big like jumping into the middle of a crowd to play your song, or something small like strumming your instrument in quiet contemplation, we're here to help each other thrive. I'm your host, Samantha Gray, and this week's guest is Kei, aka Kishi Bashi. Kei is a singer, multi-instrumentalist, and songwriter, although I want to point out how cool it is that his main instrument on stage is the violin. Recently, he has gone on tour promoting his 6-year labor of love, Omoiyari, a song film by Kishi Bashi, a beautiful and introspective documentary film that explores minority identity and the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. That's available to watch on Paramount+. Thank you so much for being here with me, Kei.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
So to start off, what is your origin story for your interest in music, and what made you decide to do it professionally full time?
Origin story in music. Well, I was a Suzuki violin kid. You know, Suzuki. So like
same here.
Oh yeah, like all Asian, good little Asian boys and girls. I played violin, and I kind of kept it up. I like the instrument. In high school, I got really serious. I played classical music, and then I eventually went to music school and studied jazz violin and film scoring.
Oh, wow.
Here I am, tired and thriving. You
know? So then, even though you studied jazz in college, what made you decide? Because in the documentary, you did mention like there was one point when you were living in New York that you were like, okay, I'm gonna start making music and making that my career.
Well, I was pretty determined to make that my career. So, even through I wouldn't have gone to music school if I didn't think I could make that my career. And so when I moved to New York, I lived in New York City for about 10 years after Berkeley, which is in Boston. And during that time, I was struggling as a jazz violinist, and I played in the circus, and I started a rock band. And that's when I started to realize that there's a potential for really thriving with original music. Because people like bands, and it was a good time to be in a rock band in New York City, like Brooklyn, and in the mid 2000s was a thriving place. I'm just using thriving a lot. It's just topical.
Yeah. Since your full-time job is also your passion, in what ways has music helped you thrive, and in what ways, if at all, has it made you tired?
Well, I think if you follow your passions, I think you'll push yourself beyond what you think you even know is capable. So I might not even know I'm tired, but I'll keep going. So like a lot of times, like after tour, it's called tour depression. So like because of the adrenaline of the tour, it keeps you going, and it kind of honestly has probably kept a lot of these germs at bay. So I usually get sick after my tour, because I don't have the adrenaline of the shows and the tour of just like get up and go and celebrate and do the show and then talk to a lot of people and hang out and do all these things like night after night. Mm-hmm. And so I've known to just be able to push myself until the job's done. And then when the job's done, I usually collapse, and oftentimes I get sick.
Yeah. I feel that's very common with like artists across all genres.
Yeah. I mean, it's a passion. It's also an obsession. It can be also an addiction. So it's dangerous. If you're really, if you love what you do, you can really sacrifice a lot of your health for it.
Mm-hmm. When you perform live, you and your band are so energetic and unique. I can see why people come to see you multiple times. What is your favorite thing about playing for a live audience?
I mean, I like to see people smiling and laughing and dancing. It makes me really happy. It means that I've done my job, because they pay a lot of money to come to these shows. And they have babysitters, and it's an event. So to me, I take that seriously, and I like to provide entertainment and engaging things. And I also like them to come out feeling excited about music and what they just saw and what they experienced, art, music. And so, yeah.
When I listen to your music, I can't help but feel a sense of depth and wonder in your artistry. Even though each album has clear evolutions in them, they still hold onto a certain classic Kishi Bashi sound. Did you have specific intentions for each album you made? Like with 151A, were you thinking, okay, this is from my rawest of hearts? And then when you went to Sonderlust, was that like, okay, now that I let out my heart, here's me expanding and experimenting?
I definitely didn't plan that like you described, but I think as a solo artist, I have the ability to just really do whatever I want. And so like if you're in a band, it's music by committee, so which is great. It can turn to something amazing. It could also be restrictive. And so like as a solo artist, I think I just kind of, my approach to making albums is I look back at my last 2 years or 3 years, or in this case, like 6 years, and I see the ideas I've come up with. And I look at them and I see what I've been into. And this is the most inspiring batch of ideas usually turns into the album. So if it's like energetic, or if it's like acoustic, if it's like folky, or if it's like electronic, and sometimes, it doesn't fit. There'll be things that are really inspired, that I think are inspired, that don't fit. And I'll just save that for a later album.
I know I kept saying like, oh, you're doing music professionally, but really it's like you become a solo artist in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But then before that, like, I guess, can you tell what other music, like if you were doing it professionally, what other types of jobs in music is there? Or
yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So I was a film scoring major. So I was able to do underscore like for docs and commercials. And then I had that technical skill. And I was able to, and as a violinist, I was able to, I was playing like weddings and like new age music gigs and whatever came, or jazz gigs at night. And I was also an improvising violinist. So that's like a specialty. So I could do, like, I played in like the circus band, so I played violin. And I think I always stayed like afloat doing only music because I was versatile. But I think if you have like a couple skills and you can kind of float around, it was possible. But I was always like thinking ahead to what am I doing like 2 months from now, like filling up my schedule with work. That's really the only way you can when you're like a freelancer.
Yeah.
But then like transitioning into like a solo artist, that was like really tough. I had to like drop everything, move into my parents' house and like work on my album.
Yeah.
But only because I saw some promise when I was like opening up doing like solo stuff.
Oh, really?
Like people were actually, reacting to it. People were reacting to it in a way that I hadn't seen like with my rock band. So we do a rock band, it was a struggle. It was fun and we were loud and we partied and stuff, but it was like, it's not like a lot of new fans would keep coming.
Yeah.
But when I did my solo stuff, I had the opportunity to open up for Regina Spektor in Australia solo when I was in her band.
Wait, so how did that come about? Like, were you in the rock band and someone saw you and was like, hey, can you do this solo? Or...
No. So I was in her band, like as a hired musician.
What?
Right. So yeah, for a year. I did it for like a couple years actually, Regina Spektor. And her huge like world tour is like big. It was big everywhere. Like Greek Theater in LA and like Radio City Music Hall in New York and like 2 nights at Sydney Opera House. It was like a luxurious like tour. And so I had convinced her somehow to let me open up for her with Jupiter One, my rock band. Uh-huh. And so we did that for the US tour. But then when we went to Australia, there's no way we could pay. She wasn't going to pay for like a band to come. And there was a whole thing where basically there's some kind of like Australian law that says that the openers have to be Australian, and she had to fight them because she made a promise to me to let me open up. And so I opened up solo in parts of Europe and where we couldn't have a band. We couldn't just bring over 3 dudes, like just to open up for $200 or whatever, in Australia was just impossible. So anyways, what I did was I opened up solo and I had like bootlegged a bunch of Jupiter One CDs because my label is so like incapable of like providing merch. So like I had to like go and copy CDs at like a place in Australia, like a CDRs, if you remember those. Oh yeah. Like, and I bootlegged like, like because I sold out of them like so quickly.
Oh, wow.
So I had to bootleg like 300 CDRs. I came back with like $5,000, And then but just playing solo, these like songs of my rock band. And that's when I realized we didn't sell like that when we were opening up for her as a rock band in America. Like it was just like, that was cool, but nobody was like rushing to buy our CDs, but people were rushing to buy my solo stuff. That's when I realized, oh, maybe there's something where I can like really focus on the softer side of my voice and, have like more creativity on my own. I think she kind of taught me that. I don't know if you know her music, but it's like, it's very intimate. Like you feel like she's in your head singing right into your brain. And I think that's something that instead of like, she really taught me how to do that, like on live, and like how to like really sing to your audience.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Woo, that's so cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool for me too. So, yeah, Regina Spektor World Tour was pretty cool.
So when you when you released your music, was that very like what were you feeling when you first released your solo?
It was a little nervous because, you know, I was kind of starting from scratch again. Because I just kind of broken up with my rock band and then putting out my solo album. But I don't know. I think I was getting enough good input from people I played it for, like friends of mine. And I don't know. It's just the kind of thing where it's you just, when you put out an album, it's just a snapshot of your life at that moment. So I think I kind of took that to heart. And being like, and that's why I call it Ichigo Ichie, which means one time, one meeting. It's unique, and every single moment is unique. Every single interaction is unique to that moment in time, and so you should just cherish it and just let it go and remember what it is. And so, like, I use that as a kind of a mantra for that album, and from there forth, just every album is just a snapshot of your creativity at that moment in time, and that it'll, you'll have a long career of many moments. That is what it is to be an artist. Is you have to keep changing and keep being inspired.
Wow. That's something to hold on to.
Okay. Yeah, it really helps you because, you know, you think you don't want to be, you're not going to create a masterpiece, you know, like, oh, I can't, it's not ready. It's not my masterpiece. Oh, it's not ready. It's not ready. I mean, that's something that'll hang many an artist up. But the true like professional artists, the ones that are thriving, that are putting out constant work and seem to be inspired, those are the ones who have the ability to let go and be vulnerable and let that idea go, even if you think it's not ready. You do your best. There might be a deadline, but you know, you still do your best. And if people love it, great. If people don't like it, and also great. You're a solo artist. You can move on and make another piece of art.
Mm-hmm. Now, I found out about your work from my friend. Shout out to Megan.
Hey, Megan. Thanks for hipping me.
And she was one of the many supporters who helped fund your film.
Thanks, Megan. I hope you got everything that we promised you.
I think she did.
Okay, good.
She invited me to come see your screening of Omoiyari, and I went in having no context of what to expect other than your beautiful music. I found myself in thought much of the time while watching your documentary. I even cried. So let's start with what brought you to make this documentary in the first place?
Well, the origins for the documentary, there was a concert piece called Improvisations on EO 9066, which is a piece I was commissioned to make in 2017, maybe 2016. And so the film was actually supposed to be a behind the scenes of the making of this concert piece. And so that kind of started this, and then as we were capturing like these behind the scenes interviews of me and I'm interviewing I didn't really interview people that much. Actually, let me think. No, like in our first trip, you know, to make this thing, I don't think we really interviewed anybody. We had like just more like sound bites and things like that. And I think we realized that I was like learning so much, and I had a lot of really things that I wanted to pursue intellectually and musically, that we just kept filming until we realized we had a feature-length documentary.
Oh, wow. So is that why it took 6 years to make? Or
Well, a lot of documentary filmmakers will tell you that it can take longer. It can take like decades, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So we had the intention of really just doing what we could to wrap it up within a couple years, and then not realizing that it really takes a long time to make the story that you want to. So that's why it took 6 years.
What was that journey like for you, for it taking 6 years? Like, how many iterations did it go through?
Yeah, it was pretty frustrating at times, you know, because it's like you make the story and like, or what's the story about? Is it about me? Is it about Japanese American incarceration? Is it about World War II history? Is it about music? You know, and I think like having these competing ideas and narratives and sewing them into one watchable like 90-minute or less than 90-minute film was really, really challenging. And so what you saw today was like the 10th iteration of major edits that we did. Like we had a 2-hour cut at one point. That was like jam packed with a lot of cool stuff, but kind of like all over the place. And then we whittled it down to 90 minutes, which we premiered at South by Southwest, and then we got bought by MTV, Docs, and then Paramount Plus, and then we had to cut it another 20 minutes out of that. Yeah.
What?
So what you see now is a very watchable movie, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh!
But it took like several years of editing.
Got it. Was there anything that you weren't able to include in the documentary due to that time that you wish you could have added, or even to the 2-hour cut? Or
the 2-hour cut had a lot of pretty much had all the ideas that I was passionate about. I think there's a scene about Okinawa. I went to Okinawa with my mom. She's Okinawan, which makes me half Okinawan, and kind of like talking about injustice and cultural erasure and things like that I thought were relevant, but it was just too much. And I think I decided to dedicate, probably in the future, like another film to that whole idea. But yeah, it's a process called killing babies. It's what filmmakers call killing baby, because you're passionate about this scene. You're like you spent so much time there, and like you got this great piece of art in itself, but does it help the story? That's the question we had to ask ourselves, and oftentimes not.
Yeah. But I had a question actually from my friend Megan. She really wanted to know, did you think about bringing up the Japanese Americans who refused to pledge loyalty to the U.S.?
Good question. That's a history that I wanted to include, but it was very difficult to talk about, to like explain the whole questionnaire thing. So I don't know if are you familiar with the loyalty questionnaire, where they had the 2 questions. And so in the documentary, it was, that was something that was always significant to a lot of the incarcerees, that there was resistance to this. It wasn't, they weren't just completely complacent and docile and, in these camps, satisfied with their situation. There was, and there's draft resistors in Heart Mountain too. So there's a resistance history. And I think, there's a lot of stuff I didn't include in the documentary because I really wanted to focus on the overall story and the narrative of being removed and then incarcerated. And yeah, it was just one of the things I really just couldn't fit in. But I thought it was okay because once you know about this history, there's so much more opportunities to dive into it and learn about these nuances. Because I think there's a lot of nuances I just couldn't include. Just didn't have the time.
Yeah. If people wanted to look up more information, is there anywhere you'd point to first to be like, here, go here?
Yeah, we work with Densho in Seattle. So Densho is a big archive and educational resource. So there's a lot of stuff. In fact, a lot of the testimonials from the videos, and there's lots of photographs, and they have tons of resources for information.
Oh wow. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
We'll have to start there.
Yeah.
I want to go back to, you said that this came about because you got hired to compose a piece. So was the piece for this documentary and you became a part of it, or was it a separate thing?
Are you talking about EO 9066?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that piece initially was, it was the improvisations that I did backed against the history of the Japanese American internment, the incarceration in World War II. So thematically, it was very tangential, because that's what I was passionate about, is learning about that history and kind of reimagining it for a modern audience. And so the piece itself, when I premiered it, and I still play it with symphonies, is similar because it has 3 of the same songs that I have featured in the film. That also became big songs in my album.
Yeah.
So Omoiyari, the song film idea is actually, it's a unified artistic statement that includes documentary filmmaking and this album. And so it's a song cycle. So the song part was the album that that finished several years ago.
Yeah.
And then the film is finally finished. So the song film is now complete. Omoiyari.
Actually, I think it's good to ask, what does omoiyari mean?
So omoiyari is a Japanese word about having compassion or empathy for another person. Like oftentimes it's used for guests, like somebody's coming, have Omoiyari. You do the best for them. But it's also used for like strangers. So like helping somebody or helping the community, having like a heart or empathy for other people. It's pretty popular. It's a popular word in Japan. So it's kind of like what I thought the root, as I struggled to see, a lot of fear and xenophobia, and I was trying to figure out what the fundamental problem with all this is, and it's really just the lack of empathy, really. So that's why I chose that word.
What do you feel is the greatest takeaway from this filmmaking experience?
The greatest takeaway? You mean as a filmmaker now that I am, that I became?
Probably from the documentary, but yeah, let's also tack that on as well.
Well, I think for me personally, it was a tremendous era of growth. Like I learned a lot, and I also learned a lot. I was able to articulate all these feelings I had like I never have before because I kept talking about it. And I learned how to interview people, and I learned how to put a documentary together. And so now I think I feel like I can go forth and make more documentaries, especially like that have narrative history and like historical narratives, as well as like, social justice themes, which I care passionately about.
When you stood in the fields of each internment camp, did each one have a different feeling to them, or can you even describe what those feelings were like?
Yeah, each place was different. Sometimes it was really harsh and inhospitable, like the cold ones I went to, or the weather was bad. But sometimes it was really pleasant, and so it was really difficult, especially when it was pleasant, to really channel that feeling of sorrow, despair, or something that I initially wanted to bring with me so I could improvise something like that for the screen. And then I realized that a lot of it's about the memory of the people and how, they might have been humiliated or, it was a grave injustice, but I think oftentimes they were very resilient and had a lot of hope that they would get out of these places. And ultimately, a lot of people would be thriving, and incarceration would not dominate their lives or their identity. They'd go on to live beautiful lives. And so to me, that was like kind of what motivated me to not be so confused about how pleasant these places were sometimes,
Yeah. What was it like talking to survivors of the camp?
It was very fascinating. It was ultimately, I'm super grateful for a lot of people and their time. And it was interesting because they're like a lot of times if they were in their 80s, they would have been children. So for them, it was actually a fun memory because they were just a bunch of kids running around in camp and parents can't really tell them what to do. And it was like, this is what people told me. And then you realize that, their parents were really shielding them from this utter humiliation, because if you were in your 90s now, and if you're still surviving, you would have been an adult back then, and you would have remembered how humiliating and how degrading it was to be just rounded up and put in these camps, And so it was, but then also, they also had these wonderful lives after the war, and they were able to still maintain their humanity, but also be very vigilant about sharing this history. And I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful to really connect with people instead of just reading about it.
Yeah. Was there anyone that reached out to you, or was it you reaching out to people, or was it even like people connecting you to other survivors?
Well, we had the first trip I did was with a bunch of Brown University students. And so a good friend of mine, Aaron Aoyama, had a lot of connections. And this group actually had a lot of connections. So we went to some museums, and then the museums would also, there's several organizations like the JACL and foundations that have a network of people. So oftentimes we go to a place and there would be people that were more than happy to talk to us, especially since we told them we were doing a research trip and we cared about the history.
Yeah.
It was very easy to find people to talk to us.
That's amazing. Was there a particular part of this whole documentary process that really stood out for you and sticks with you often?
This whole process is now a blur in my mind. So, I did see a lot of beautiful empty places, because a lot of these camps were in the middle of nowhere. It's places that were undesirable. You know, these are like desert areas that people really have trouble living in, you know. And so like I went to a lot of these open, empty places, and I think that was particularly inspiring to me. It kind of changed my life, honestly, because I started to appreciate nature more, and like untouched nature, you know. So
yeah, is that something that you weren't because you did live in Georgia, and I felt like Georgia is very nature bound. So was that just something you didn't appreciate when you were living there, or?
I mean, Georgia's like a jungle. It's like it's tropical almost. There's like huge spiders and snakes and stuff, you know. The cockroaches are massive.
Oh gosh.
And I think, but no, there's a lot of nature, but I think the Mountain West area, you know, the desert regions and like these like sharp peaks, and, you know, Manzanar is right by the Sierras, and then Heart Mountain is in the western Wyoming. I think it's different. You know, the topography is different. Athens is also, I still lived in city centers, you know, like I lived in New York City. Even in Athens, which is in the middle of nowhere in Georgia, it's still a college town. So it's a little bubble.
Yeah.
So it was nature-y, but it wasn't like wide open.
Got it. Well, I want to shift the focus of the documentary to what I felt most connected to as a fellow Nisei from my mom's side. And one of the biggest takeaways from your film is the fact that the United States has had a long history of assimilation while refusing inclusion throughout its conception. And it continues to be prominent today, causing many to experience a bicultural identity crisis that I feel like we are finally talking about and addressing through pieces like your documentary. So were you even aware before you made this documentary the duality of your Japanese and American identities, or was that something you came to realize during filming?
I think I came to realize during filming, and that's kind of why the film even exists, because it's documenting my changing attitude towards just being an observer to becoming like somebody who can actually confront this new changing dynamic. You know, I think towards the end of the film, it's you know, I talk about protest and helping, you know, immigrants and asylum seekers to this country, and I think it's like you realize that Asian Americans have this duality in which we are privileged to some extent, you know, and then but we also, you know, but being a minority, we also have this trauma of assimilation and various like discriminations that have occurred in the past, and so I think to me it was to finding a place to settle in there, but also being unapologetically American, you know, and feeling comfortable here was something that I did not feel when I started making the film.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain more about the journey for you of figuring out for yourself, like coming to terms with this, or
the process of coming to terms with it?
Yeah, with your bicultural identity.
Well, let me think. I think I started artistically, you know, it's easy to see because like in the film, I started using more Japanese in my songs. I had like Japanese melodies. I collaborated with a taiko group in Chicago called Hoetsu. And it's these are things that I would not have felt comfortable before. Like, you know, using cultural you know, I could call them affectations, but cultural things in my music, integrating it into my music was something I was not comfortable doing before. So I think I could see that, and then personally, in making this film and writing the voiceover and like doing all this stuff, I've convinced myself that it's something that I can be more comfortable with, because I you know I've become more of working on this film and like researching history and like understanding the assimilation and the systemic racism that immigrants have always felt is like something that I started to understand that I'm not I don't feel afraid of voicing anymore.
Oh, that's beautiful. Knowing you have a daughter, have you both discussed it since the making of Omoiyari?
Well, I mean, she definitely has seen the movie. So she's also a teen. She's a teen. So I don't really know what, you know, I haven't talked to her about it recently. She's proud of it. She's proud of me, you know, and she knows that she's in it.
Oh my God.
So, she's definitely very she's pretty woke for her generation. Her generation is definitely more inclusive.
Yeah.
So she understands everything about what I'm talking about, and I made sure she did.
Yeah.
We talked about racism and assimilation and all these things. But no, we don't talk about the movie on a regular basis. It's more like she wants some money because she's not working so much right now. Because she has college essays to do, So
and that's something about this generation that I think is really amazing is the inclusion is getting there, where it's like I felt in the 90s or earlier, you were made fun of for like bringing something different or even trying to speak like a second language.
Yeah.
And everybody would say like, you need to speak English.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember, okay, like until like in the 80s, like nobody could use chopsticks except like Asian people. This is true. Mm-hmm. And then in the 90s, I think like sushi started becoming popular, and then Chinese food started becoming more popular, and then I think like, yeah, it was like blatant in your face racism like has I thought disappeared. I haven't heard it in a while, but it's still out there. Mm-hmm. And I think people are just more like I wouldn't have been able to make this movie like 10 years ago. I wouldn't have felt comfortable. I think there's a lot more support from the mainstream.
Yeah.
Meaning like mainstream, like white people, support minorities and their voices, But I think honestly, coming back to Sola, I think I read one of her, college essays, and one of them was about Asian American identity. Mm. So I was like, oh, she actually, we don't really talk about it, but she is aware, and she's very comfortable about her biculturalness, because she did mention it was one of the topics of one of her essays for college.
Oh, so. That's great. I like that.
Yeah. I was actually thrilled. I was thrilled to see that, honestly.
Yeah.
She probably won't hear this podcast, so it's fine. She's not a podcast person.
That's fine. We can keep this to ourselves. Yeah. Well, I really liked seeing your parents in the documentary. I thought that was very cute. Like your mom reminded me of my mom, actually.
Yeah. My mom's great.
But do you think that we can even have this conversation with our parents?
Yeah, with my parents and that generation, I think a lot of them are feeling more comfortable, but there's also a lot of people who are not, and they might be still convinced that they don't feel safe, or America is not quite their home. I mean, America is their, if they're American, they live here for decades, then yeah, it is their home, but they might not feel truly American, mm-hmm. and they might still feel unsafe. And honestly, when you get to a certain age, and you've lived your life a certain way, you don't really. I don't think oftentimes they won't think it's their place to speak up or to enact change. They're not going to become activists. Mm-hmm. They might vote differently.
Yeah.
But besides that, they're gonna pretty much live their life the way they are. So, mm-hmm. If you talk about the older generation, I think a lot of them would appreciate this message, but it's not going to change their lives like drastically.
Yeah. At least if we can like even open this discussion, or in a sense, if they can even get some sense of peace from what we've learned, I think that would be pretty cool.
I think if they see their children and their grandchildren like happy and thriving, I think that'll probably just bring them joy.
That's true.
That's in my opinion.
Yeah.
And not be frustrated. I think that's the worst thing, is to see your kids frustrated. That's sad.
Yeah. Talk to my mom. I have an art career. So.
Well, I'm a musician. So. They were worried for a while.
Yeah. But I'm sure they're so proud of you now with like what you've accomplished.
They're definitely proud of me. But it took, I moved back in with my parents when I was like 36. So, I don't know. That's for like a couple years.
Yeah.
It's humiliating.
I feel that. I feel it's becoming more common now. The age of like 35, 36, where we have to go home, or there's like.
Really?
Yeah. I hear it more often. Like I'll admit I had to do it too. And it's a weird feeling of like you think you're supposed to have it all at this stage, and then it's almost like not a quarter life crisis, or it's like a rebirth in a sense, where you have to be like, well, I have to go back. I don't know if that makes sense.
Are people getting laid off and they have to go back, or are they quitting their careers and then going back?
Oh, you know what? I think it's well, in the entertainment industry, it's definitely being like, we're being laid off.
Oh, in the entertainment, really? Like a lot of what, like filmmakers, actors, that kind
Yeah,
of
well,
stuff,
I'm
musicians?
in animation, so it's like everybody in the industry's been hit really hard,
Right.
and so yeah, actors, camera people, like set decorators, makeup. And then in animation, we like
I thought you guys thrived during COVID. I thought,
technically, yeah. I mean, technically, in terms of that was the most work we've had, but
yeah.
at the same time, we were forced to stay
Oh,
home,
right. Yeah.
and there was like no interaction with anybody else. And it's something different when you're like stuck at home, forced to work, you know?
Yep. Forced to work. You're like the frontline workers of entertainment industry.
Yeah.
You know? First responders.
First responders.
Don't worry, we got your entertainment needs met.
Already, Omoiyari, the album, is so different from what you've made before. Do you feel that this documentary experience has changed your process in making music going forward?
Um, has the process of making this documentary? No, I think music for me is. I mean, I learned a lot about how to score for film, even though I studied it in college. I think it hasn't really changed my musical process. My musical process is still the same. I collect a lot of ideas, I work on them, and then I take whatever inspires me to create like albums, you know, in general. So I think it's changed me in the way that I see now filmmaking is a possibility to take up a lot of my time, which kind of scares me, you know.
Oh, really? So, are you gonna do more films, you think, or are you gonna combine film and music again, or?
I'd like to, you know, there's a lot of possibilities for me now, you know, because but I'm always involved in my you know, I am making a new album for next fall. So, you know, I usually work on my music videos, so I have a lot of ideas. Even think about Japanese, you know, anime. That's what I'm thinking about right now. So I love anime. So I was looking at some studios to hire potentially, you know. So
In Japan?
yeah, maybe there's also some non-Japanese studios I've been looking at that make anime that pretty well. I think so.
That's awesome. I feel like a lot of people would say, "Oh, would you go with Studio Trigger?"
Oh, I don't know them. Is that yours? Is that
Oh
your
no,
company?
it's Studio Trigger. They've done Kill la Kill, or like forgot. I can't think of another, or even oh, there's a really good one,
I'll take your suggestions.
Studio Saru. I'm thinking of
Okay.
like these boutique ones that create
Yeah.
really crazy.
That's what I'm looking for. Tell me if you think of more, just email them to me.
Oh my
I'll look
gosh,
them up.
for sure.
For sure. I just started the process, so
I mean, Masaki Yuasa has such a crazy, unique style if you watch any of his films. But he's done mainstream stuff too. Yeah, his latest film was called Inu-O, but he started with this really, it's like experimental, like his feature film he started out with was called Mind Game. And he made it when he was 40. And it was his first feature film. And he's been kind of like, you know, rising up ever since. So
he's Japanese.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I want to do something. You know, I love like anime, and you know, I've worked. You know, I've done like stop motion myself, and it's like I love. I feel like that's something I would like to do more. You know, get into, especially if I have like a music video budget or something.
Yeah.
I can like do them, but I think yeah, the concepting them that's like a lot of work. So that's what I'm working on now.
It is. Yeah.
Like, I'm not an artist. I can't draw anything. I can barely draw, you know. So, but ideas, I think, is where the gold is. So I'm trying to focus on that.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I was gonna also like ask, you know, what kind of animes have you been watching lately, or
I only watch the super popular ones, you know. Like I was watching like Attack on Titan, and
okay.
of course I like Demon Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
But those are, I haven't watched too many recently. What am I watching right now? Watching one called My Demon right now.
What's that
pretty
on?
cool. It's on Netflix.
Have you watched Pluto?
Oh, I watched I watched one episode of it. So that's Tetsuan Atom, right? It's some kind of a spin-off of Atom, the character, that manga. I watched the first episode and it was really interesting and then strange because it had a completely unrelated like sub-story for like 30 minutes into the episode. I like Japanese anime because I see a lot of like American anime, and it's not like, or American animation in the style of anime, you know. And to me, it's like, it's not like, there's like a lot of times it's like missing. It's kind of using like a lot of, I don't know what my point of critiquing it is because they're trying, you know, but it's not as edgy to me. Like Japanese animation has like some kind of really either violent or story like edge that's just like gripping, you know, for some reason. And a lot of times they rely on a lot of just samurai or like Japanese like tropes, you know, that aren't particularly exotic to me, you know, when I look at it, you know, there's nothing really exotic about a samurai or a ninja to me, you know.
Definitely.
I just kind of grew up with it, and I don't even think Americans are particularly impressed either, you know, because Americans are aware.
Yeah, unless they
Western
like Tom Cruise in Last Samurai.
Yeah, they like Tom. Yeah, I mean that was intriguing. He makes a good samurai. Top knot and all.
I'm looking up. There is this one that I thought was really interesting called Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead. Have you heard that one?
No, I'll check it out. Zom 100.
You watched a trailer. It's like such a unique and cool take on the zombie apocalypse where someone's like works a corporate job, finds out that, oh, this is my life being a corporate stooge, right? Mm-hmm. And then the zombie apocalypse happens and they're like, oh my gosh, I have so much free time. And I was like, that's so relatable.
It's Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things where it started off as a manga, but then both the anime and the live action came out around the same time. And I'm like, oh, that's how you know that, like, you know.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or that it's so popular that they had to make them both at the same time. Because usually it's like one or the other. They either make the anime first and then the live action or vice versa, but never so close.
Yeah. I think anything where it's a manga first, like the story is like really solid. You know, the characters are good and the story is solid. And then I think that's when a lot of these other things fail, where they go straight to like animation first. They don't think enough. They don't spend enough time on the story, the characters, to make them like likable. Because Japan's like so competitive, their manga market, and it's like if it's not good, it's not gonna, like, nobody's gonna give it a chance, you know.
Well, I want to kind of go back. Are you gonna do all your whole album or all your music videos for this next album to be anime? Is it gonna have like a storyline, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, maybe conceptually. I'm thinking. I'm still working on the music, but there's a concept that I've been floating around in my head, you know. So I'm looking at some iconography and some kind of storylines to tie it all together. Maybe even creating a universe.
Ooh,
you know.
That'd be cool. I think of Daft Punk when they did their.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
That was so good.
About, that whole like 30-minute movie.
Mm-hmm.
I like to do that, but I don't even know how much that cost them. So that sounds crazy.
I know, and they got like really good budget too.
I don't have that kind of money. But I have a little bit of money. So,
is there anything you can talk about your new album, or is that still kind
of? The one coming out next year, yeah, it's kind of dancey.
Ooh.
It's like a party album. Yeah, so it's kind of a departure. It's a departure from my last 6 years of work and this documentary, but only because it's a lot of the ideas I was making that probably just I never felt were appropriate.
Oh, interesting.
Until I've completed the movie. The movie's out, you know, and now I can just do something else.
Yeah. I guess like, so is it a combination of all the ones that didn't fit into your previous albums and then some like?
Yeah, it's a lot of ideas I came up with probably in the past few years that are kind of like energetic and dancey and like have nothing to do with Japanese internment. So it's kind of like, or cultural erasure. I don't know, like all these themes that I'm passionate about still, but I also like dance music.
Yeah.
So I like EDM, and I like, if you listen to my music, it's not all just sad and orchestral.
It's not, no. Which I think is so
like
unique
fun.
about it.
I like fun. Yeah.
Which I think is why so many people are drawn to it, obviously. Is there any, so that's what you're working on musically. Is there any other project other than music that you're working on right now?
Nope. That's what I'm working on, my new album.
Oh my gosh.
Working on my new album. I have to send it off to mixing in January, so pretty much.
Oh,
Pretty
wow.
much doing that.
Wait, so is the time that it takes from sending into mix to it being released in fall, is that just like promoting and then getting the hype up to release
Yeah.
it?
There's usually takes several months, like publicity and then manufacturing and I don't know, like making music videos, and like my label is like nervous even with January, like mid-January. They're like, it's making them nervous. Like,
oh wow.
Like that's how it works. You need time to set up promotion.
Yeah. But then you're already thinking of the music videos and you're like, well, this is the style I want for, what's coming up next.
I can already tell. It's like I need an anime, something anime.
Do you even do like music for movies or?
I mean, I studied it. I did. There's a show called Stillwater, Apple Plus. I did that. I wrote the music for that, and yeah, I do it sparingly. I'm not in the industry because it's pretty. I worked on like a couple feature length docs like back in the day after I graduated, and kind of burned. It led me realize that I also used to work like I made commercial jingles and stuff like demos and stuff like that, and I don't think I was a very good film scorer because my music would be way too exciting to be definitely for docs. My music's just way too exciting to be under any like talking, like it.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So I failed. I'm a failed doc filmmaker. So, but or like underscore, I'm just not really good at it. I just like to make music, like in your face music that's emotional.
Yeah.
All the time.
Okay. So is there anything recently or in the past couple years that you would say has been inspiring in your life lately that has got you feeling passionate and invigorated?
You mean like my fiance that I'm going to marry next year?
Whoa, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, she's upstairs. Kimberly Dill. She's a professor of philosophy, environmental philosophy. So it's kind of like learning a lot actually about the world and our existence and how we've thought about our existence and indigenous narratives and the environment and stuff like that. So.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. How did you guys meet, if you don't mind me asking?
I think she was on a road trip when I was living in Montana and she was on a road trip. Mm-hmm. So we kind of had a first date in Yellowstone.
Ooh.
Pretty much, long story short.
Yeah, that's unique. You don't hear about first dates together in the wild.
That's how we did it.
That's so cool. How long have you guys been together for?
A couple years. Yeah.
And then how'd you propose?
A New Year's Eve show. Last New Year's.
Oh my gosh.
So my parents happened to be there, which is cool.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
Wow. That is something to be invigorated about, like, and passionate.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it's great. It's my new lease on life.
Yay. I mean, things happen. I know people hate when you say this, but it's like things happen for a reason, or like, things happen so you can get on the right track or whatever life gives you.
I think,
I don't know if you believe that.
I do. I mean, I believe that the shit happens. I believe in that, but it's like, it's really your perspective. And if you want to take a lesson out of it, sometimes statistically something awful is just going to happen to you,
Yeah.
And it's just like, if you're prepared, you do your best to prepare for what life throws at you, and then you do your best to just live through it.
Yeah. in the vein of funsies, is there a random animal fact you can tell me?
Funsies? Oh, in the realm of funsies. Animal fact?
Yes.
Oh, well, I just learned from my environmental philosopher fiance that bats do a majority of pollinating at night. They're a major pollinator of plants, and so like having a dark like sky for these plants is extremely important for pollination. Did not know that. Yeah.
That's really cool. I'll have to look that up. As part of the show, I'd like to pull out a tarot card for the episode because who knows, maybe you need to hear it today. And I'm using my Universal Fantasy Tarot deck. And basically what I'm going to do is shuffle. And you just tell me when to stop. And then we'll see what's going to be the card that comes up on top.
Stop.
Okay. Ooh, cool. We got Strength.
The Fool.
No.
Strength.
So if you can
Strength. Okay.
Yeah. It's number 8.
Okay.
And 8's a good number.
Cool.
If you want to describe what you're seeing in this.
It looks like I can only see a figure. And he's in is there a dragon, some kind of beast? And he's in a forest. A dragon. Is there a dragon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it make you feel any kind of way or?
Well, I'm about to go bouldering, so maybe it does make me feel like I need to warm up a little bit. I need to conquer it.
You need to get that inner strength in.
Yes. That's not going to help me. I need finger strength. That's what I need.
Well, the dragon will help you.
Okay.
So the strength description says there are no enemies, only lovers yet unknown. We can react to fear by opening our heart. The force of the spirit can win out over arrogance and tyranny.
There are no enemies, only lovers
yet
undiscovered. Unknown. That like lovers?
I know. So, I mean,
so
I like reading it, but then going off of what our situation is or what we've talked about. Yeah. And honestly, I feel like this goes into Omoiyari. The fact that, like we talked about, people without compassion, like without empathy, it feels like they lead with fear because really fear is our biggest.
Yeah. I think like when you think about what podcasts are really popular, if you look at the top list, they're all like crime podcasts, like all the awful things that people do to each other. And if you look at, like those shows, when you look at the commercials, they play the commercials so like about security or like, about like how are you going to protect yourself, and a lot of preppers and like people like that. You think about, sure, there's like lots of danger out there, but how scared are you of it? And that can really determine how much empathy you have because, your empathy is kind of like, it goes in circles, you protect yourself first and then you got your friends and your family and your loved ones. And then kind of they go in concentric until they're like basically strangers. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if you're fearful, you're not going to be able to extend that empathy very far because you're fearful for your own little circle that you're in. And so oftentimes the first step into having that kind of compassion for a stranger is really to be less fearful.
Yeah. And to draw up that strength. Yeah,
that's how you draw that strength. And that's how you can be strong with those lovers unknown.
But yeah, and like even just going back to the card, a dragon, a beast would be something so scary if you didn't know it, but it's fear. And so when you don't have fear, the person in the card is like touching the dragon on the head and she doesn't have that fear. She has that strength to, bring that compassion to the, again, lovers unknown.
I also learned that from Kimberly that a lot of times the dragon in especially like European traditions, it represents the pagan religions that they've conquered. So like what's his name? Saint whatever, slaying the dragon is really conquering of these unknown pagan religions, the indigenous religions.
Wow.
With Christianity.
I mean, it's any large religion. They'll do anything. Power. Really? Yep. Power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Power.
Well, Thank you so much, Kay, for being here and talking with me. Where can people find you and follow your work, watch the movie, hear the latest updates?
Well, there's kishibashi.com, and there's also omoiyarisongfilm.com, and there's the internet. You can just Google Kishi Bashi, and there's a bunch of stuff. So
Awesome. Well, sadly, we are at the end. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy this podcast, please follow and subscribe. If you're feeling especially generous, consider donating to Spotify listener support. You can also follow Tired and Thriving on Instagram at Tired and Thriving, all one word. You can email if you want to reach out, give feedback, or let me know maybe how you've been uniquely thriving at tiredandthriving@gmail.com. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a thriving week. See you next time.